Yesterday we improved our program by adding a new feature, the edit feature. To implement the edit feature, which allows the user to edit an existing to-do, we added a case edit statement. So the user may add, show, or edit to-dos, and if they press edit, we ask the user to enter the number of the to-do to edit. And we convert that to-do into an integer because the input function returns a string data type always. So even if it's a number, that number comes as a string type. So you need to convert it into a type which behaves like a number, so you can make math operations to that number. You can order it, you can add other numbers to that, and so on. So data types are important in programming. And then here we subtract 1 from that number. So if the user entered 5, for example, we want to convert it into 4 because list indexing starts from 0. So once we get the index, then we ask the user to enter the new to-do and we add that new to-do to that position in the list. So that gives us the existing to-do with that index, and that will replace the existing to-do. So we end up with an updated list which contains the new to-do. And that's what we did yesterday. Let's see what we can do today to improve our program even further while you learn new core Python concepts. So I'll talk to you in the next videos. Hey, welcome back. As you have noticed throughout the course, we have been doing two main things, which is adding new features and then improving the user experience. So these are two phases that you have to go through over the life cycle, the development life cycle of your program. And in this video, we will be improving the user experience again. What exactly we'll be doing is this. So let's say the user is adding new to-dos in our to-do list and they show the to-dos and they want to edit something. But in order to say what they want to edit, they have to count currently 1, 2, 3, and maybe they decide on number 3, so they enter 3 there. So we want to make this experience flawless. We want to show numbers in front of each to-do so that the user can simply look at the number and then write the number there so they don't have to count. How do we do that? Well, we have to look at where we are printing out those items, which is in here. So we produce that list using this for loop. The for loop goes over to to-dos and prints out each item. Now, the solution to show numbers in front is the enumerate function. Let me demonstrate you what enumerate is. So let's say we have the to-dos list currently, which is, let's say, clean, throw, and do. That's a list we have at this point. So we have that list in here. We want to show that. So currently what we do is for item in to-dos, print item. Right? We execute and we get the list. Now what we want to do is we want to go back in here and say enumerate, which is a function, and this function gets as input a list. So the list goes as the input of the enumerate function, and the enumerate function now makes available not only the items of the list but also the indices of that list. So we're going to get two elements from here. Therefore, we need two variables for I or index. For index, an item in enumerate to-dos print item. And we also print index. So index and item. So go down here, press enter, and this is what we get. So what happened is that we print out the index in the first iteration and also the item. So in the first iteration, the for loop goes and gets clean and its index 0. So it stores clean in the item variable and 0 in the index variable. And therefore, in here we print out 0 and clean. It does the same for the other indexes and other items. So let's go back to our code now and implement the same enumerate function. So for index item in enumerate to-dos, print index item. If you want, you can also add a third argument in between here, which could be a string, single quotes, should be enough, dot perhaps, or a dash, wherever you like. And let's see what we will get. So run, stop and rerun, add throw, add do, show. Yeah, that's what we get. So it's looking better. Not ideal though. I would prefer not to have these spaces, or at least the space between the dash and throw. So how can we change the format of this text? How can we remove that space? Here we don't seem to have any spaces. So we don't have much control over this string when we use this print function. But we can get control over that if we use f-strings. F-strings is something we're going to be using in the next video. So I'll talk to you there. In the previous video we used the enumerate function to access the items but also the indexes of the to-dos list, and we ended up with this output. Now we want to improve this output, so we want to define if we want a space or not. The answer here is f-strings, so let me demonstrate you what f-strings are. So let's suppose we are in the first iteration of the loop, and in that current iteration perhaps index is 1 and the item variable is the string throw, right? We have two variables. Now how do we get a text to look something like, you know, 1 throw or 1 throw, like that? How do we construct a text like that? Well, the answer is f-strings. So let's say row, a variable, is equal to f and double quote here, double quote here. So inside goes the f-string. What is an f-string? Well, an f-string is something that contains these brackets, and in these curly brackets you can enter a variable. So let's say you enter index, and then after that perhaps you want a dash, perhaps you want a smiley, and after that you may want another variable, item for example. Execute that and see that row now is this string. So what happened is that index, so that part was replaced with the value of the index variable, which is 1, and then we have a literal string. So this part here is just characters, they are not inside curly brackets. So explicit literal string, it shows like that as it is, and then this part is also replaced by the actual value of the item variable. So that's what we get. We can make use of this now in here. So let's say row is equal to f again, and index, a dash, and item. That should be enough. Oh, and then we need to print row, of course, if you want to show it on the command line. Otherwise you'll not get any output. So add clean, add scrape, show, and that's the output. So I think it looks better now. Feel free to use any characters here, so not dash but maybe a dot makes sense more for you. And that's about f-strings. So like that you can place as many variables inside the f-string as you want, and you always need to use f, otherwise this string will not accept those curly brackets. Well, it will accept them. You can do like that, index, but that will be read as a literal string, so index will not be recognized as a variable if you don't have that f in front of the double quotes. I hope this makes sense, and I'll see you later. In this video we will add a complete feature to our program. Complete meaning allowing the user to mark a to-do item as complete, as done. So then that item will be deleted from the list of to-dos. For this, we're going to be using a case complete statement. So if the user enters add, show, edit, complete, in case of complete, what do we want to do here? So this is the logic here. When you want to manipulate something, in this case, we want to manipulate the list. So if the user enters complete, we want to modify the list. So we want to remove one item from that list. That is a manipulation process. And when we think about manipulation, we think about methods. So if I was you to find out how to remove an item from a list, I would open a Python console and use the dir function and enter the list there. That will give me a list of methods. So I'll take a look here. Perhaps I find something like remove. Yeah, here is remove. So I might then ask help for list remove to see how remove works. So this gets a value as argument and it removes the first occurrence of value. Value is that. So then I'll try this. Maybe my list is equal to A, B, and C. So my list, you know the notation of methods, dot remove. And then the value. Well, this means by value they mean the item. So maybe B, and then try my list. And B is gone from my list. So that is one way to find out what method you need. Another way, of course, is to use Google. So if you did a search on Google, a simple search such as methods to remove item from Python list, you would get some answers. For example, here it says clear, pop, remove. So it seems there are other methods as well. So Google search, so some internet research might give you more answers to your questions. So clear and pop, you can also find these in dir. So you see clear should be here. Here is clear and pop as well. So you might want to try this out. Help list.clear. Remove all items. So perhaps that is not what you need, but anyway, this is how you learn. So you experiment with things, you research, try out list.pop. So in case of pop, this removes and returns item at index. So in the case of pop, the argument is an index. It is not the item itself. So that means you could use pop as in mylist.pop. And if you say 1 here, C is removed and it is also returned. So you see this method returned the removed item. And if you check my list now, it only has A. Now, perhaps you might be wondering, what is -1? Well, this is a default value of the argument. Meaning, if you have, again, my list is equal to A, B, and C, and you simply say my list.pop without any arguments, that means -1 will be the default argument. -1 corresponds with the last item. So list indexes has another system besides the a default system, which means 0 index for A, an index of 1 for B, and an index of 2 for C. You can also specify indexes like -1 for C, -2 for B, -3 for A, and so on. So my list, you get that. So we have two options, remove or pop. Let's see which is the one we need. So complete, and then we say if the user enters complete, then we want to ask the user perhaps this same question here. So indent it with tab. A number is equal to int input number of the to-do to edit. Well, let's change this to complete. So we prompt the user with an input function, and we convert the user input to an integer. So the user will enter 1, 2, or 3, or 4, and so we have the index of the item we want to remove, to complete. Then what we do is we point to to-dos dot pop number. So that's the thing we did here as well. We remove the item with that particular index. So let's see how this goes. Type add, show, or edit. Let's add some items. Clean, add, throw, show, 0 for clean, 1 for throw. So let's place 1, press enter, and let's show now the items. Oh, that didn't work because I entered 1 when I was asked to enter add, show, edit, or exit. So I should enter complete here first and then 1. So complete, then we get asked number of the to-do to complete. Let's say 1 now, and then we say show. So clean is remained and throw is removed. Now something quick we might want to improve here is to start the list from 1 and not 0. So for that we need to go to the show case. So from index item in enumerate, we say that index, and here we say +1. So if we do that, rerun, we say add, clean, add, do, and then show. Now this will start from 1, 2, and so on. And then in edit, we subtract 1, so we compensate for that increase, and we should do the same in here. So number -1. So that should be okay now. So let's try again. Add, do, add, clean, add, paste, and show. 1, 2, 3. We want to complete item with index 2. So show. Yeah, so clean was the item with index 2, so we removed that item, and now we have to do and paste only. Another improvement is we want to add edit complete here, or exit, so that it shows in here. Yeah, let's check that quickly. Yeah, here we go. Complete is part of the query now. And so this completes this video. That was the complete feature that we added. Let's keep on improving the app while learning new Python core features. I'll talk to you in the next video. See you, thank you. Let's experiment with the code a little bit now, so that you get a better understanding of certain aspects of Python. I want to focus here on the for loop. The for loop iterates over the to-dos lists and accesses the index and the item in each iteration. It constructs a string and it prints out that string in each iteration. Now, if I press enter here and then I press backspace to go one indentation level back at this point, same level with the for loop, and if I say print index comma item, what do you think we're going to get? And also I'd like to print out hello before that. So let's see. I'm going to run this, add a to do, clean the keyboard because it has to be clean sometimes, add a new one, the monitor as well, and a third one, add buy grocery. Press enter, press show, and let's look at the output. So perhaps you guessed what we're gonna get. So we get clean the keyboard, clean the monitor, buy grocery. All these three are produced by the print row line in here, this one. And then we have this third line, hello to buy grocery. So that is produced obviously by this line. We get hello printed out, and then we get 2, because index is 2, and item prints out buy grocery. So why did I do this experiment? Well, this was to show you that once the loop ends, which is the case when you unindent the loop as we did here, then these are still variables. Index and items are still variables. And index has as a value the last index in the for loop. And the same goes for item. Item, the variable, will also have as value the last item of the list. So the loop went over and over again. Index was first 0, in the second iteration was 1, in the third was 2, and so once there were no more items in the loop, we get index assigned the final number, the final value of 2, and the same goes for item. So I hope that gives you some perspective to understand the for loop better. The index particularly could be used if you want to calculate the length of the list. So basically you would say length is index plus 1. So that would print out length is and index plus 1, which would be 2 plus 1, 3. So we would get length is 3. Or you could also use an f string if you like. So f length is, and you'd have to put this inside curly brackets and close the string with a quote. So let me run this, add to do 1, add to do 2, show, and we get length is 2. However, getting the length like this is quite a workaround. I would even call it a hack, because calling it a workaround is giving it too much credit. The actual way to get the length of a list is by using another more appropriate function, and that is the len function. It's a function as argument it gets the list. And the len function doesn't even need a for loop. So if you wanted to show the length, all you'd have to do is like that, run, add to do 1, add to do 2, show, and you'd get 2. So that is the output of the length function. So anyway, we don't need the length in this app, so I'll just delete everything and keep the loop as it was before. An experiment now over the enumerate method. If you open the Python console and you do for I, item, or ij, whatever you like, so I is about the index, j is about the item itself. It doesn't matter what variable names you use. In enumerate, hello, print I and j. execute, and this is what you get. So strings can also be used with the enumerate function, because strings also are sequences of items, and each item is itself a string, so each character of the string is a string itself. That's why we get 0 in the first iteration, H, so J prints out H, then we get 1, E, and so on. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, you know that functions return an output, right? And here is a function. So what is the output of this function anyway? Or let's try a list as we did before. So let's say A, B, and C. And if we check A, we get this. So that's a bit confusing. The reason we get this is that the enumerate function returns an enumerate object. So just like we have list object types, we have strings object types, we have integers for numbers, we also have this strange object here. The difference here is that Python doesn't know how to display this object. The object actually contains data, but you cannot see them. So it is not designed, the object itself is not designed to display those data in the command line. But if you use a popular type such as a list and you place that object in a list, so basically to convert it into a list, you press enter and you get this. So now we have a representation of that enumerate object. This is actually the internal construction of that A object, but now we can visualize it using a list. We can see it. So it's a list made of tuples. That's the first tuple, the second tuple, and the third tuple. Each tuple contains the index and the item itself of the original list. The index of B and the B itself, index of C and the C itself. So actually when we do for ij or for I item, whatever you call them, in enumerate, and you have that list here ABC, what you're actually doing is you're doing this. For I item in this list. So enumerate is a list of tuples. And you say print I item, press enter, enter, and we get this. So actually I is getting the first item of the first tuple, and then item is getting the second item of that first tuple, and we print them out here, and we do the same for the other tuples. So that's about the enumerate object. Of course, you can do the same with a string, so hello, and you can convert it into a list. Sorry, I did a typo here. Enumerate. So B is an enumerate object, we can convert it into a list. And now we see that same construction. However, if you're thinking of converting the B enumerate object into a string, you'll get a bit disappointed, because all this will do is just convert that representation to a string. You see it has quotes now. In other words, str doesn't do what you intend to do. It's actually useless here. It is useless because the anatomy of an enumerate object would not be able to represent using a string, because a string is just made of character of strings, and a list can be made, as you see, can be made of other tuples and other lists or other items, strings, numbers. That's why it is possible to convert enumerate into a list. And that was a series of experiments on the for loop and the enumerate object. Thanks a lot. Hi, welcome back. In this video we will create a simple program we'll start with this list and then we'll create a program which outputs this 3 lines here. So the program will sort the items alphabetically. As you see, Ben is the first one, John, and then comes Sen. And we will also place a number before each of the items here in the output. So let's do that. How can we do this? So you see that this is an iterative operation, so we're doing the same thing over and over again. So naturally you think of for loops. And here we're not simply printing out the items but also the indexes. So you start thinking about accessing the indexes with the enumerate function. Therefore we need something like for index item in enumerate waiting list. Then we want to construct a string, perhaps a row. So it's an f string. It's going to have a variable, which is the index, and then after the index we have a dot, and then another variable, which is the item. Notice that items should be capitalized, so let's add a dot capitalize method here. So it is possible to add expressions inside these curly brackets and not only variables. And then if you print out row and you run the script, you're going to get this 0, Sen, 1, Ben, 2, John. So we need to change 0 to 1. To do that, you can just add 1 and all the indices will be shifted by 1. So now we have 1, 2, 3. But the items are not sorted alphabetically. So how can we sort a list? How do we handle this? Where do we go to find a way to sort lists? Where the first thing to go to is to check dir list to see if there's a method that modifies the list. So just scroll, and it seems there exists a method, so perhaps sort is the answer here. So if you check help list.sort, you see that it sorts the list in ascending order and returns none. So all we have to do is point to the variable that holds the list and then to the sort method, and don't forget the parentheses. If I execute this script now, you'll see that Ben will be the first one, followed by John, followed by Sen. So the items are sorted alphabetically successfully. As you can see, we didn't have to assign a new variable to the list, because as I explained you in the previous video, lists are mutable. That means the method will mutate the list. So the method itself doesn't return anything. You see here, return none. So the method doesn't return a list. In the case of strings, string methods, they return the new string. So just to refresh your memory, if you had like hello.replace, so that's a method of a string, and you replace perhaps O with X, you press enter, you get hell X in return. So the replace method returns a string. But if you have a list such as C, D, and B, and you say dot sort, you press enter, you get nothing as output. So the sort method doesn't return anything. Otherwise, we would have seen that output here in the console. Now the list itself is sorted, and it is somewhere floating in this interpreter session, and we cannot access it because we didn't assign it to a variable. So if you wanted this list to be accessible, you'd want to first assign it into a variable such as my list is equal to that, and then you say my list sort. Again, no output is generated because the lists are mutable and the sort method doesn't return an output, but my list has now been sorted. So B is the first letter, C is the second, and D is the last one. And lastly, how do you sort the list in descending order? Well, you can see the help file, and you will see that there is a reverse equal to false argument. That means if you say reverse equals to true and you check my list, you're gonna see that D is the first one, followed by C, followed by B. So by default the reverse is false, which means the list will be sorted in ascending order alphabetically. And that was the example for today. Thanks a lot. Hey, in today's programming tool, I will teach you how to ask good programming questions. Now that is very important, not only when you are a beginner, but also if you are an experienced programmer, because 30% of programmers use Stack Overflow every single day. So that is every single day. Now Stack Overflow, it is a forum on asking and answering questions. So everyone can ask programming questions there and everyone can answer them if they know how to answer. So you get upvotes for giving good answers, and you also get upvotes when you ask good questions. But getting upvotes is not the important thing here. You should know how to ask good programming questions, because otherwise you will not get a good answer, or you'll not get an answer at all. So it's very important to know the way you communicate your problems to other programmers so they can help you. So Stack Overflow is the biggest repository of question and answers. So you can basically find everything there. But if you don't find it, then you can ask your own question. So I'll show you how to use Stack Overflow and how to ask a good programming question there. First, let's simulate a problem. Let's suppose we were trying to create this program. So we ask the user to enter kilograms using this input function, and the user enters 10, for example, and then we try to multiply that by 2.2, but we get this error. So first of all, you might want to try to search on Stack Overflow. So you want to go to Stack Overflow, and this is the text box where you can search. I would suggest you to start with Python and then try to put some little details about your code and about the error. So in your code you have this input function, so you can say Python input, and then here in the error you have this type error. So write type error, press enter, and you'll get several answers there. These can be about anything, so we want to be more specific there, and we want to include the entire error message, the last line here. So input, and then copy and paste that. Type error can't multiply sequence by non-int. So then you might want to click on the first answer, which usually might have your solution. And then down here you have these answers, so you can get some clues that this is saying you need to convert it into a float. And that is actually the solution here. So this value will be a string, so you want to convert it into a float. Run the code again, enter 10 perhaps, and now no error. So if I print this out to see the outputs, I'm going to get 22. So 22.0. So that is the solution. Now that was the research part. So how to search for a problem. So you can search using that box Or you could search directly on Google. So you'd have to write like Python input type error and press enter. And usually the first few results are from Stack Overflow. In this case, it is the second result. So if you click that, it will take you here. So this also is another question from somewhere else, and it also suggests you to use float in front of input. Now this row input is actually from Python 2, so this is quite an old answer. By the way, row input was used previously instead of input, which is used now. But this stays the same. So that was how to research a question. Now let's see how we can ask good programming questions. So on Stack Overflow, you can use this Ask Question button, and then you want to provide the title and the description of the problem. The title should be written in a way that you should be able to describe your entire question in one sentence. So in our case, let me undo this so we get the error reproduced. So when we run this, we enter a number, we get this. So you could say type error when trying to convert kj to lbs. So you're trying to convert kilograms to pounds, but you get a type error, and you're using inputs. Again, Stack Overflow will suggest you some existing answers, so you can click there if you want. Otherwise, you can continue with writing the body of the question. And here is where you want to be very specific, and I'll show you the anatomy of a good programming question. So first of all, you want to describe what you tried. I'm trying to get kilograms from the user and convert them to pounds using the code below. And here is where you paste your code. So that is the code, I copy it, I go here and I paste it. It's very important to select the code and press that button to highlight the code. Otherwise, the code will be shown in a very chaotic manner and perhaps you'll not get any good answers. So you see down here how the code will display when I highlight it. And don't provide screenshots of your code. So don't provide an image which has the code inside, because others cannot copy the code, so they might want to try the code on their own IDE. And the only way to do that, the only sane way to do that, is by providing the text, not an image. Then you want to describe what error this produces. So you say that code produced the following error. And here you want to paste the entire error message. So be careful, you want everything. So all the details, which is the red text. Again, the code has to be highlighted. The error message is also code, so it has to be highlighted. And then you want to describe what you expect the code to do. I expect pounds to be converted from kj. And then finally you want to ask the question again. How can I get the kilograms from the user and convert them to pounds? So that's what you want to do, and you want to ask that question at the end of your post. Finally, you want to provide some tags. Python is the first tag, then input perhaps, which is the function you're using, and maybe the error type error. You see, these are existing tags that others have used before, so Stack Overflow is suggesting them. And then if you press on review your question, so you just have a look at the question and then post your question, and it will post it publicly on Stack Overflow, and usually you get answers very quickly in a matter of minutes most of the time. So that is the anatomy of a good programming question. Describe what you're doing, put your code there, put the error message that the code produces or the output, if it's an output and maybe you're not expecting that output, and then here describe what output you expect so that others know where they can help you. And then ask the question. And that's it. So that's about asking programming questions, and that's about Stack Overflow. You can ask a question if you like also in the Q&A inside the course. So again, the same structure would be recommended. In the Q&A inside the course, you also have this highlighting feature. So please highlight the code. It's easier for people to read it. On Stack Overflow, you'll probably get answers quicker because there's a big number, thousands of people online all the time here. So that makes sense. So thanks a lot. I'll see you later.